Good enough.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida Extension Service here in beautiful Hernando County. And joining me today is my, regular co-host, our Master Gardener volunteer, Bernie. Good morning, Bernie. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
And also joining us today is our new, how long are you going to be new for? It's going to be a while, I
I
think.
mean, as long as you're willing to call me new, I suppose.
Okay, I guess Colby's still new. So Colby's our new Hernando County Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator. And we are here today to answer your questions, your comments, to discuss whatever kind of lawn and garden or tree or weather or ant or plant or whatever things that you want to discuss. Just please go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll talk about it. If you have a question, we'll try to figure out a solution to it. If you have a question and you have pictures, you can email them to me. Let me go ahead and throw my email up here. If you email me those pictures, I can go ahead and open them up on my email and screen share them here with everybody. And then we can all figure out what's wrong with your plant, your lawn, your ants, whatever it might be. So, okay, great. We got at least somebody on here. Good morning, Buddy. How you doing? Buddy up in the Panhandle is probably going to get quite chilly this weekend because I know that here in Central Florida, we're supposed to cool off this weekend. And good morning, Cindy. Cindy's going to cool off. She's going to stay a little bit warmer than us in Pinellas County, but close. Hey, anything less than about 90 in the middle of the afternoon will be a pleasant change.
That's the truth. What is it supposed to be? Mid 50s, low 50s here.
Yeah.
I think overnight or something. I can't remember now that I'm trying to pull the exact temperature.
Yeah, I saw something about Sunday night, 40s or 50s, I guess, in this area.
That's cool.
Yeah. No, 40s is bitter cold. I can't handle anything below 40s.
What should we be planting now? What's going in our vegetable garden? Anything this week?
Cool season vegetables. That's what you want to be putting in right now. So you can plant seeds for any kind of lettuce or green leafy stuff, kale. You can plant spinach, but it has to stay pretty cool for spinach. If our afternoons keep popping up to like upper 80s or 90s, it's still too warm for spinach. Broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, cabbage, all those different cool season vegetables. Now's the time to go out there and put the seeds in the ground. And Buddy's going to be 49 low for a Sunday night in Tallahassee. That's pretty chilly. And yes, Lestine, collards. So any of the collards, kale, mustard greens, turnip roots, all of those, they all grow really, really well here during the winter. They like the cool temperatures. They even take it when it gets down to right around freezing, a little bit of a light frost. Collards are supposed to taste a lot better, a lot sweeter after a light frost. So those are what you want to be planting now. If you start planting too many tomatoes and squash and cucumbers, they're going to do great today. They'll take temperatures of 49, but in about a month or two or three, when we get a freeze down to below 32, they will freeze to death and they will turn to mush overnight. So,
yeah, historically, the week between Christmas and New Year's is almost always has a frost. So, and often has some serious freezes. Beets are a good thing for this time of year. Beets are, and I like those. They make great beet soup, and pickled they're delicious. I love that.
Beets are good. Radishes, for anybody here who likes radishes, and I like them very much. They're very, very easy to grow. Just grow them during the winter. If you try growing radishes here in July, It's not going to work out well, and there's not a whole lot of advice I can give you. And yeah, once the weather kind of cools off, if it stays cool, like not hot but not bitter cold, a lot of these different crops, the collards and the different greens, once they come up and they get settled in, they grow just great. They do beautifully. And Teresa is on this morning putting all kinds of links in the chat. So Teresa listens along to what we're talking about, very quickly finds University of Florida fact sheets on it, and goes ahead and shares them in the chat. So you can click on them for more information.
One thing I would like to point out, if you're doing container gardening or you have raised beds, don't use high, darn, I can't think of help me out. The product that dries out and you can't re-wet it. They stick
Peat moss?
Peat moss. That
Yeah.
has got to be one of the worst things you can put in garden soil, because if you let it dry one time, you'll spend the rest of the season trying to get it damp again. So peat moss in unbelievably small or no quantities in your garden mix soil. Avoid it if you can. And there's some really good products out there that have none. A lot of them are pine bark mixes. That pine bark in a real fine mix is a super good thing for growing. The pH is about right, the texture is about right, and the mineral content is about right. So it makes it really nice. It's easy to keep it wet, and if you're growing most things, you'll find that the lower pH or the lower side pH is more productive. Had somebody last week that had a soil test. For the first time ever, I recommended they lime the soil. I could not believe that they had a 5.5 pH and they were growing zoysia, and they needed to bump it up a little bit, and they needed about 60 pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet. So I told them put it down about half and put down the other half 3 months later. But that's so rare that happens in Florida.
That is.
I mean, you can almost always say never lime your lawn, but
in Hernando County, because other parts of Florida are different. You might need to lime it every year, but you don't know unless you get a soil test. So don't go out there and lime your yard without getting a soil test and being told that you need to lime your yard.
But I think that it's probably one of those situations where the eastern part of the county, there's some areas that have got clay and historically had pine trees on them for lots and lots and lots of years. And it built up a very acid soil, and it's a unique mix. Only occurs in a few places. Downtown Brooksville will often have fairly acid soil. And this little area out before you get into the forest, north of 50, has acid soil. But other than those two little spots, I haven't seen that in the county anywhere.
Yeah, a lot of people have the opposite. I've seen soil tests from Hernando Beach is the most extreme. Their pH will be 8.5. It's through the roof.
And they want to grow bahia, which needs
yeah. And they say, well, I lime my yard every year because when I lived in Maine, I did that. I moved here and I do the same thing. Is there something wrong with doing that? Yes, there is here.
Yeah. So we've given you two things to not waste your money on: peat moss and lime. So make a note of that.
Anne Marie looks like she's pulling up harvesting sweet potatoes. I have sweet potatoes in my backyard. They've been in there for at least 100 days at this point. I'm holding off until November 1st before I go out there and start digging around at all, and I'm hoping that I have a good harvest. Sweet potatoes are really easy to grow. Just have to be patient. Plant them during the heat of summer. Leave them be. They need at least 100 days growing, and you almost always get a crop of sweet potatoes if you try growing them. And she has lots of greens in and looking good: bok choy, collards, kale, onions, broccoli, red and green cabbage. Those are all things that I've either planted or I'm about to plant. Romos, arugula, dill, persimmons coming in, and chestnuts. We can't grow chestnuts here, can we, Bernie?
I didn't think so.
No, I think we're too far south right here. But she's up there basically on the Florida-Georgia line, so
You know,
you should be
north
able
of
to grow.
Gainesville makes a big difference. The world changes.
Yep.
The grass changes, the wildflowers change. What you can do dramatically changes. I thought it was interesting she got persimmons because if you have persimmons here on the day they're ripe, if you aren't out there and get them, one of the critters takes them. It's amazing. It's like there's a possum, raccoon, deer convention.
Yeah.
That, says, hey, we got to run over to Joe's house. The persimmons are coming in the morning, and they're gone by noon. So.
Yep, they will disappear overnight, and you will not see any of them anymore.
The going back to talking about the acidic soil, you mentioned that it's they have really basic soil over in Hernando Beach. It's kind of interesting how in different parts of the country, or I mean, you can call it the world, whatever, they being near the ocean and having salt water around you, sometimes it can make your soil really acidic, and sometimes it can make it really basic, just because like table salt it's neutral. There is no, but it's a product of an acid and base. Just getting a little chemical on you, it can really, depending on what else you have going on, it can, like around you chemically, like in your soil or in the air, in your seawater, it can vastly, you can have a million different things happen that can change it and make it either extremely acidic or extremely basic.
Well, the thing with Hernando Beach is God didn't make Hernando Beach, we did.
Yeah.
And it's basically built on dredge.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ever have to go out there and look at a yard or approve a Florida friendly landscape, if you start looking through the soil, you're going to see a lot of finely ground seashells. Seashells are calcium carbonate.
Mm-hmm.
Lime is calcium carbonate, so that's why they tend to be very, very high pH. But I mean, there's still things that they can grow out there. People in Hernando Beach still have gardens. It's just there's certain things that are just not going to do well out there.
It's they have a very interesting little microclimate over there, because it's like you said, it's mickle when it comes to places over here. I remember when I was doing invasive veg treatment, there's some of the stuff that grows over on shoreline right there is, we don't see it in any of our other properties, especially in Hernando County, because it's they have just vastly different ecological constraints there than they do anywhere else.
I'm sure you worked with Brazilian pepper and white lead tree.
I am a menace to the Brazilian pepper tree population. I have killed so many Brazilian pepper trees. I'd say thousands at least in my time. And lead trees too. We didn't see as many lead trees as we did those pepper trees, but lead trees too. Over there in the preserve, the lead trees were pretty bad, but nothing on Brazilian pepper trees. And people like them. They look at them like, oh wow, this is so pretty. And I'm like, oh, we need to take this thing out.
Because it gets the little, it's like a mimosa tree. Mimosa is kind of a pink and white round flower. And white lead tree, it's just white and it's round like a big cotton ball. And Hernando County, there's an ordinance against having them.
Yeah, but it's illegal. It's not illegal to have them. It's illegal to. It's like a state law that you can't plant them, transport them.
You can't start a nursery and sell them.
I didn't know about the ordinance. if you ever, I don't see too many really mature ones around here, but in our properties down south that I would go to, we had people with these very mature pepper trees that grow. The trunks are this big, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I've had this tree in my yard since I was a child. It's beautiful," and I'm thinking about all the ways I could chop it down because I'm like, I hate these things. They propagate so fast, and
They do.
those
They
little.
they turn into clumps and
Mhm.
spread and spread and spread.
They're also funny enough related to poison ivy, poison oak, and
Mhm.
you'll getting into them, cutting them up and stuff. If you get the innards on your hands, or it's real sticky, and it'll give you a nice little rash.
Yeah, I went to one of the houses out on the beach, and the hedge all around the house, it had been all viburnum at one point, and about every other plant had red berries all over it. And and it was very difficult to convince the owner that you're not supposed to have these plants. No,
Hmm.
they're viburnums. Viburnums don't have red berries. I just am amazed how neatly that had been taken over,
Hmm.
and they had been keeping them trimmed back, and it really looked pretty good. But obviously, those little red berries were going to be spreading those plants everywhere in the
Hmm.
area. The birds will come along and move that thing in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. They're those pepper trees will grow into massive, massive clusters. Like, I mean, it's stuff you could park a full size truck in, and they're really difficult to take care of because even if you go in and make chops and spray herbicide in every little one, it's so difficult to hit every single main stalk, and they'll keep coming back. I wish people were aware of. If I had to pick one species of people to be aware of to get rid of it out of their yards, it would be pepper trees.
Well, that's a nice place to come from,
Yeah,
Monique.
Monique is up in Bryson City, North Carolina. I guess watching the leaves turn color up there and enjoying the nice cooler weather. And University of Florida and our office has a lot of information on controlling Brazilian pepper tree and white lead tree. So if you need that, we still have a very attractive brochure that I helped to create a number of years ago here about Brazilian pepper and white lead tree.
It's really amazing. People uh, love their plants, and if they've got one they shouldn't have, it's very very difficult to get them to do anything about it. They've got a Chinese tallow tree. It's been there for 10 years. There's 90 million of them being mowed every week when they mow, and they don't understand that they're planting those things for blocks in the community.
Hmm.
Now, when I first moved to Florida, we bought a Chinese tallow tree, planted it, and when I became a master gardener, I found out I shouldn't have it, and we took it down. And that's been about 20 years ago now. And I still have those things pop up in the yard every once in a while. Every time I mow, I take out some, and you know, forever and ever and ever, there's going to be Chinese tallow there now.
Hmm. It's well, I
The
wonder.
seeds die out eventually, but some of them can remain viable for a long time.
Mhm.
White lead tree remains viable for years, I think. Brazilian pepper, the seeds are only good for about 6 months, I think.
Yeah,
Well, there are a lot of seeds that obviously have 20, 40, 50, maybe 100 years of life in the soil. If you go out in your front yard and just pull up a bunch of grass, let the sun get to a spot in the lawn, and in a week, you've got weeds growing there. And they didn't run in, they were sitting there opportunistically waiting for a hole to appear so they can pop up. And
Hmm.
Yep.
if you've had a lawn for 10 years and you've worked and worked and worked and there's no weeds, you'll still find if you get a bare spot, you got weeds. And it's not because they blew in now, it's because they're going to be sitting there for 50 or 100 years waiting for an opportunity to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you use pre-emergent, if there's a 100,000 seeds per square yard, and you spray them and the pre-emergent's 90% effective, that still leaves 10,000 seeds to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And the next year you spray it again, and now we've only got 1,000 seeds. And after 3 years, you get it down to some really small number. So, the important thing is if you really want to use pre-emergent and you want to get things under control, you're going to have to do it and do it and do it. Just because the numbers are so great here in Florida. Some of these areas out in the western part of the county where it had been pretty much a few scraggy plants in an area that had not much nutrient and not much going for it. As soon as you go in and make any improvement, you've given all those seeds an incentive to start going, and it's just amazing how many things will pop up, and it's really kind of neat. It gives you an idea of what Florida looked like in that area maybe 1,000 years ago, because it'll restore very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Teresa says she's been fighting Brazilian pepper for a year and just made it angry. Yeah, if you go out there and just cut it down, you just make it angry and it will come back, but even more sprouts than what it had before.
So
you must use an herbicide to kill it.
So I see she said in the next comment, she said she used a drill. I would say you want, so when we would treat Brazilian pepper, we would cut and depending on how big it is, really big ones, you may need like a chainsaw or something, but we always used a machete. We'd cut depending on how big. If it was a smaller one, you can cut it all the way down and coat the top of the inner stem tissue, coat that with I think we were using like an amino cyclopyr. I don't even remember. It's method 240 SL is what we would use. You coat it and that'll kill it dead as a doornail. But you really have to make sure that you're getting down to the core of that stem to really get it, and you want like surface area coverage. So doing it with a drill may not give you the best results, but if you cut it clean and like cut it clean off, or really big ones, if you cut multiple slots out of the trunk or the stem, you'll have better luck.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to do the treatment really quick. Some of those trees will seal up in 10 minutes. So
they recommend doing it within 5 minutes tops. So
when we would treat, we'd go into an area to treat Brazilian pepper, and you carry in one hand your machete and the other hand a spray bottle with your herbicide mix, and it's like they actually called it hack and squirt. That was the method of killing these trees. We did that with tallows. We did that with lead trees, with camphor trees. There's a whole bunch of them that you can do that with. So we used method 240 SL. It's kind of expensive. There may be an alternative. I know it's good for broadleaf terrestrial, but it's really getting that interior plant material coated, because that's all connective tissue that goes through, that's pushing water up and down, and you really want to get that herbicide down into the roots, but you're doing that through the trunk because it's basically its own death sentence when it's sending all of that herbicide down and up and so forth.
I know generally for homeowners you can use either glyphosate or any product that contains triclopyr, and both of those are easily obtained by homeowners.
I would say that a triclopyr herbicide is going to work much better than a glyphosate herbicide on Brazilian pepper trees.
I have found that a mix of the two really works.
You're just burning them down, huh?
Yeah, it really works.
Yeah, mixing the two and just to control weeds works very well also.
We would always mix. That's good for Kogan grass. Is if you try to get Kogan grass with just glyphosate, it's not. It's not. I mean, you're going to brown out the leaves, but it's super active. It's fire adapted, so it's super active under the soil, and you can mow it down. It grows back, no problem, every time. But if you would use, we'd use Amazopir and glyphosate mixture, and that'd cover both, and it'd kill it. It is $900, but listen, you don't need the 2.5 gallons. That is way too much.
That's going to last a couple lifetimes for a normal homeowner.
For a neighborhood, it would last a couple lifetimes. You're spraying that at around 10%, and it's out of a spray bottle. So you need a few ounces maybe, and that'd cover pretty much a homeowner's entire property for a while. Please, nobody buy 2.5 gallons. That might get you put on a list.
Yeah, you're going to go on the watch list for some reason. Yeah, and weed control is kind of a touchy subject. I know a lot of people are hesitant to use chemicals on their property, and that's fine. We understand that. And there's a lot of ways that you can control problems more safely, more naturally, using organic controls. But sometimes in certain situations for certain weeds, you're just going to have to use certain products. Always read the directions. Always use the personal protection equipment. Always, no problem using more personal protection equipment than what the label calls for. And follow the directions with mixing it. And don't be like a typical guy and go like, oh, it says 1 ounce per gallon. Mine's really bad. I'm going to use 2 or 3 ounces per gallon to really get it good. Don't do that.
Yeah. You know, the manufacturer has spent a ton of money developing the product and coming up with the dosage. And if double the dosage worked better, that would sell more product, and they would recommend a higher rate.
Yeah, they would.
So as a general rule, whatever they recommend is probably the most efficient rate to use. And if it isn't, it's usually because the chemical is dangerous and you're probably not going to be able to buy it anyway. So the things that are available to homeowner, that they want you to use as much of the product as you can. So if they tell you to use 3 ounces in a gallon, 4 ounces isn't probably going to do you any more good, because if it would, they would have told you to use 4 or 5 ounces so you'd burn up the product quicker. And people don't understand that. If you use really high Roundup, you knock down the top part of the plant and the roots come back. If you use a recommended rate, it takes a little longer for the top part of the plant to die. But when it dies, there's nothing there to resupply it. So, and I know I was guilty of that, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated learning in the Master Gardener class, is that I could save half the money that I was spending on chemicals. In fact, I save a lot more now, because for the most part, there are a lot of times where you don't really need the chemicals. There's some other techniques that work just as effectively.
I'm a proponent of using herbicides responsibly and using them, but like when they are super useful. And I think Bernie and I got on this tangent last week. It was, they poured, and he said this, you pour a ton of money into it, but most of the issues you see with herbicides are caused from people using them incorrectly. If everyone used herbicides correctly, we would not see nearly as many harmful ecological effects from them as we do.
Well, all the money that they spent on insecticides, spraying lawns in this county when there's no insects. After you go through for 3 or 4 years, you've pretty well eliminated everything, and they keep doing it. They've done that now for 20 years in a row, and 15 years of that herbicide is in our drinking water. So, if you think it's good to be drinking those things, malafion's good for you, then we've done a good job. But otherwise, maybe not.
Maybe a little plug for my a class I'm doing this Friday. We're talking about wildlife in your yard, and we're going to talk about how insects are the base. They're the base of the whole deal. So you have to have them, and that if you wipe out your insect population, it doesn't bode well for the rest of your. There you go, the rest of the ecology
For more information,
of your yard.
and that's tomorrow, I think, Friday.
Yes, tomorrow at 10:30.
Okay. Facebook Live?
Facebook Live, facebook.com/HernandoFFL.
I don't think I have that one on here.
It's sad because
If you go put my Linktree link up there, you can find it there.
We're
let me just start
preaching
throwing
to
all the
the choir
links up.
here. The people that are watching this program are the people that are the really well educated ones, and it's sad because the things that these people already know are the things that their neighbors really need to learn, and we'll get to them eventually, but probably not in my lifetime is that going to happen before we get to all of them.
I like to think that even if I'm not teaching someone something new, I'm teaching someone something they can tell, a way to talk to someone who doesn't know, that they know personally.
Well, where's all the questions? Folks,
I
we
know.
need some questions.
So, if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will do our very best to answer them. And Teresa will quickly go and pull up links for more University of Florida information. I think I'm just a member of way too many different Facebook gardening groups, because when I go on Facebook, they all show up in my feed, and some of the questions, y'all are going to kill me. So I'm sure it's not the people who watch us regularly that are asking these kind of questions, but all the other people out there asking questions, and then all the other ones that are giving them answers, sometimes they're so very, very, very wrong. So don't assume that if you have a specific question, and I see people asking for medical advice and for advice on using pesticides and a lot of other things, and they just put it out there in a Facebook group, and they get all these people that you've never met. You don't know if they know a lot or a little or nothing, and you're getting all kinds of conflicting advice. You want to be really careful about the advice that you get, and then double check it. Google is your friend, but be really careful. It looks like Bernie's having some technical problems here.
I am.
So Google is your friend. Technology is your friend also, but only when it works correctly. So Google this stuff, but don't go to like Bob's blog, and Bob lives in California, and Bob's just putting his personal opinion on there. Don't take that as fact. If you go to University of Florida or any other state university and read their information, their research, their advice, it's going to be correct, it's going to be safe, and then hopefully effective to cure whatever your issue or problem is. So be really careful. Sources. Yeah, check out those sources and be discerning with the sources.
Well, I've noticed that often these things come from commercial establishments, and they give you an answer that's based on what's best for them commercially, and not necessarily.
Sometimes, yeah.
And a lot of the times, it might be right in certain parts of the country, but obviously, if it's something from Delaware, it's not very often that it would be applicable here. We have a totally different climate, and just the humidity changes between here and California make it a totally different world, even though we have about the same kind of temperature. So if humidity is that important, all the other things that go along with climate are really important too. So, uh, don't bring your plants from up north and expect them to be happy here. Even if it's a plant that normally grows well here, if it's acclimated to growing in Michigan, it's probably not ever going to get really happy in Florida. And if you buy one in Florida, don't bother taking it to Michigan. It's not going to like that either. And especially if it's something like an orange tree.
Yeah, I wonder with people who are like with Michigan Extension, I wonder how often they get questions on can I grow oranges in Michigan? Can I grow bananas in my backyard? Why not? We seem to get all the questions from people going the other direction about I want to grow apples, I want to grow cherries, I want to grow. I had a question from a gentleman that had a very specific variety of, I think, aspen tree, some kind of tree that grows up north but does not really grow here. And we have to tell them, I'm sorry, that just does not do really well down here, too far south, too hot. And they're, well, why not? I didn't make the rules. And Anne-Marie, that is exactly the response that I was digging for with all that. So she says that's why they only watch us.
Why can't I grow an apple tree here? I get that question fairly often. That uh, peaches grow well here, but peaches are. I love to tell people, if you really want to grow peaches, the thing about it is peaches require a certain number of chill hours, and in theory, we get about 300 chill hours a year, but in practice, we might get 300 this year, 200 next year, 400 the next. So if you really want to grow peaches, grow one tree that's real light in chill hours, one that's just right in chill hours, and one that's about 100 to 150 hours over. And one of those three trees will have good fruit every year. And, that really does make sense. If you're a homeowner and all you want is some peaches, the trees aren't that expensive. Unfortunately, they're relatively short lived here, but you can put in three trees and you will always have a decent crop on one of the trees, and maybe you'll get a few on the other two. So, but if you were just another 50 miles or 100 miles north, that's one of those things that completely changes. And if you're south of Interstate 4, the game's pretty much over. So
Yep.
we're in a very unique little slot here on peaches. And so, yes, you can grow peaches. They do very, very well, but they don't do very, very well every year. So if you have some trees that will do on either side of a standard year, you're pretty well in the peach business.
Yeah, and you just have to get the right variety of peach. They grow peaches. I mean, when you think peaches, you think mostly Georgia, right? Georgia peaches.
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina grows very, very good peaches, and you always see those in the grocery stores every year. California, I believe that they grow a ton of peaches in Utah because I've seen them for sale, and I think Utah is trying to expand and and sell more of their peaches in with all the other varieties that are sold every summer. And what happens is, as summer goes on, first you get the Georgia peaches, then you get the South Carolina peaches. But I read once before, I grew up in Maryland, and the number one agricultural crop in Maryland is peaches. I'm thinking, I never saw a peach tree the whole time I lived there. I lived there until I was like 18. But apparently they grow a lot of peaches there. They grow them all the way up into New Jersey and New York. But if you try growing one of those varieties here in Florida, it may grow, but it's never going to flower and give you peaches.
Yeah, we had peaches in Indiana, so. But they're really late season uh, fruit up north. So,
Yeah.
so much of the stuff's coming from Chile and South America, and uh, I know they had some of the doctors of plant pathology or plant medicine that went down and did some surveys and helped out for a little while in Chile. I don't know if you were gotten your degree by then, but I know that some of the people that Stacy has been in school with ended up in Chile for a little while,
Hmm.
and we do quite a bit of government inspection. So the things that are coming in are pretty much grown under the same conditions that we grow them here, and they've got pretty decent soil, pretty decent climate setup. So works well for us in that we can swap as to when the seasons are for a particular product, particular produce to be in season.
Yeah, I
Strawberries
know.
are one of those where you've always got strawberries coming from somewhere.
Yeah. They may not be necessarily the best strawberries, but it's amazing the variety of things that are available at grocery store now. I know not that many years ago, if you walked into a grocery store and you asked them, "Do you have watermelons here in the produce department?" If it was a couple month period during the summer, they say yes, it's watermelon season and we have whole watermelons. If you walked in there in December, January, February and asked for a watermelon, they laugh at you. No, of course we don't have any here. Now they do because they bring them in from Central America, South America. You look at the melons, the peaches, plums, nectarines, grapes from Chile and other countries. Just the availability year round, on one hand, is great for people's health. People, are buying a lot more of those things to eat healthy, and it's great that they're available for pretty much the whole year, not just 1 or 2 months like it used to be. But sometimes, things that are shipped halfway around the world aren't the freshest, aren't the tastiest. Um, Sometimes they can be quite expensive. So there's upsides and downsides to it.
Yeah, I think Florida tends to do that with tomatoes. We tend to have some varieties of tomato that are not very flavorful, but they're easy to pick and transport, and they occur at a time when we don't have tomatoes from anybody else in the country to compete with us.
Yeah.
So you can sell them no matter what, and you know it's nice to have them year round, but it would be a little nicer if they were a little tastier.
Yeah, for the best quality, like Anne Marie says, it is best to eat with the season, eat things in season, when they're in season, when they're grown locally, at least in the Southeast US or even up and down the East Coast for certain things.
Do cranberries have competition from outside the United States? That seems to be something that uh,
I'm pretty sure cranberries are native to the US, one of the very few fruits that is. I
I
think.
love cranberry sauce, but it's a shame it's only available a limited time if you want uh, the cranberry relish type thing. If you want it in a can, obviously you can get it year round.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you
The
want a fresh cranberry product, they don't seem to do that.
apparently it freezes really well. So you can freeze the fresh cranberries. Because one of the keys to growing your own, vegetables here is you want to grow enough so that you can eat it fresh and enjoy it, and then either can it, freeze it, dry it, whatever, to enjoy it for the rest of the year until it's the season once again to grow more of it. So we've got a couple questions here. Teresa asked, is it important to keep grass away from all fruit trees and the trunks? Does it really make a difference? Yeah. Yeah, you need to keep the weeds and stuff will compete with the tree. If you have a lawn guy, he will try, no matter if you, even if you tell him not to, he will weed eat around that tree and he will whack the trunk with the weed eater line. I don't care how good he is, he's going to nick it at least a little bit on occasion. So,
My my feeling there is that instead of weed eating around trees, you should round up around the trees and clear a spot and clear out far enough that you can mow up without mowing into the trunk. Uh, I've got a zero turn, and the things that I have to mow around, I try and round up so that I can mow around them without hitting the trunks.
yeah, yeah. You know, New Jersey has cranberries, so they grow them up there. And Sharon says she usually avoids fruit from other countries. How safe is this imported produce in terms of use of pesticides? They have to follow U.S. laws and rules and regulations to be able to ship it here, sell it here. They do random inspections, but they only inspect 1, 2, 3%, a pretty small percentage of what's brought in. So it's generally safe. There are rules they're supposed to follow. Do they always follow those rules as far as pesticides go and how they're raised? I don't know. So,
But then do the American farmers. So,
Well, I know that if you follow the label on a on a herbicide and you spray your fruit tree with it, there will be no health hazards to eating the fruit if you follow the label. Now, if you go like we were talking earlier and double your rate on your herbicide application, yeah, you might it might be a different story. But if you follow the label, I know for if you're doing it, you know how much you put on it, you have nothing to worry about. So it's really how much trust you have in the farmers who are making it.
almost every one of those products has a time before you can harvest. So
Hmm.
uh, the time to harvest is listed on the label on just about every product that you can buy.
yeah, and if you're using any kind of insecticide or anything else on your plants, you really need to read the entire label because you'll run across sections where if there's certain types of plants it should not be used on, they will tell you that. And I have gotten calls here at the office, and I'm sure Bernie has also, where people say, I had a hedge of a certain type of hedge bush and I sprayed it for insects. Even though I never saw insects, I still sprayed it. Now my hedge is dead. And I'll just pull up the label for that product if they're able to tell me what they even sprayed. And I start looking through the label. It's like, it says on the label not to spray it on that hedge bush. So you need to read it before you sprayed, ideally not after, and your hedge or your bush is dead.
Hmm.
Half of the herbicides for lawns say safe for St. Augustine, and then at the very bottom it says except Floritam, which almost all of St. Augustine in the county is Floritam. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, it really is dangerous, damaging to the Floritam. And yet, if you don't read the whole label, you won't know that. And it's amazing how many people have never read a label. It's a lot of pages of stuff, and it's stuck on every one of the things you
It
buy,
is tiny print
and
too.
it's very small. Yeah,
Every label, every single one, you can go to the manufacturer's website and they have a PDF of it. Every single one, your SDS and your label.
Yep.
It's super easy to find. And if you, for whatever reason, if you can't find it, if you contact that company, they will give you the label. They will not fight you on it. I've done it a million times. It's super accessible information. If you don't want to have to read the 0.1 point font that they have on the label itself.
Yeah, the
I do.
manufacturers they'll have a website, they'll have email, they'll have a 1-800 phone number. I've known people that have called them with just kind of technical questions. can I use it in this situation? Can I use it 10 feet from a pond or whatever? If you have technical questions, they are there to answer your questions, and they're more than happy to do so.
Yeah, well, they don't want any ecological disasters to be on the back of their herbicide,
Yeah.
even if they said in the label not to do it, they want you to they want you to use it correctly.
Yes, they
I
do.
will say too, like you're talking about, it'll say it's safe for St. Augustine, but it's actually not for the variety we have here. Do a test plot. Just do a test plot. Find a little corner of your grass that you're not worried about, and this goes for any herbicide, insecticide you're using. Go find somewhere that's not super noticeable and do a test plot. If you don't know, if you're not sure, and there's no way to tell, I mean, that's how we tested at Swiftmud if stuff would work, is we just coat something and see, all right, well, what does this do? Because there's a lot of factors that affect the how well herbicides, insecticides work, and your situation may be different than the neighbor down the road. So don't go off what they told you. Just do a test plot. It's super easy, not super expensive. You need a small amount. You know, that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of looking up the labels, and there's so many of these products. People call and say they're using X, Y, Z. Well, if you've never used it yourself or had any reason to be around it, I'll look it up, and I would say probably most of the time people are using the product wrongly. They're either missing the reentry time or they're missing the PPE, the personal protection equipment. Uh, I'm amazed how many people go out in flip flops
And spray
and
Roundup.
spray things.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, I suppose Roundup cleans your toes okay, but it doesn't list that on the label. It says you're supposed to be wearing shoes. So
Shoes, long sleeves,
yeah,
eye protection.
Mhm.
I don't want anyone to ever get Roundup in their eye. It's not fun. It's not good for your health. It's not good for your sanity even. It's terrible. So don't please, if you take anything out of anything I'll ever say on here, use your PPE if you're using pesticide. Please.
And to make it even more confusing, they change the formulations frequently in these products. There's a lot of different Roundup products that don't contain glyphosate,
Mhm.
or it contains glyphosate and several other things. So they're always mixing up the active ingredients in them. People will call and they say, I used, Bug Away or Bug Be Gone. They give me a trade name of something. It's like, I don't know what's in that. So I have to start looking it up to find out what the active ingredient is, or they'll have to ask them, because sometimes the Bug Be Gone X and the Bug Be Gone Y and the Bug Be Gone Z all contain different active ingredients. And it can just get really confusing for us to all be on the same page with what you're using. And is it going to be effective, and is it safe to use?
well,
Well, if you
I in
oh, go
the
ahead.
in the '60s, I worked for a company that did aerial spraying, and uh, some of the things when they would mix it, you had to wear a respirator. The pilot, when he was spraying it, wore this thing that had three canisters on it so he could breathe it. And it turns out that all the things that we sprayed that I can remember have all been taken off the market. So
Yeah.
uh, there's been a dramatic change in the safety requirements. It's one of those things that it has really gotten a lot better. The products that are available now, if you follow the rules and uh, they're very very safe products. If you read the label, they do exactly what the label says. So
Mhm.
if they tell you that after 2 days it's safe to be around and it's not a problem, that's fine. But if you go out and you spray a product that's got a 48-hour reentry, and you let your kids go out and play in the front yard, you're not doing your kids a favor. You're
Mhm.
not doing anybody a service. If they've determined that it takes 2 days before it's safe to be on the yard, uh, be on the safe side. At least spend the 2 days before
Hmm.
you put the kids or the dogs out there.
You know, those companies don't benefit from you going and getting sick or getting injured from using their products. They're telling you this for your safety because it doesn't help
Mhm.
you, and it really doesn't help them if they're in the news because someone got sick from rolling around in their grass after they sprayed an insecticide.
Yeah, well, the lawsuits are really expensive. Bayer found that out. They spent $20 billion to buy Roundup from Monsanto, and then got sued over uh, some really vicious lawsuits on Roundup, which are pretty much, I believe, be baseless, and decided that it was cheaper to spend another $20 billion to create a fund.
Yeah, they have a fund that just pays that
Yeah,
just pays it out.
so
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because the legal fees of fighting it were going to be worse than, and that was a case of uh, somebody said because it's a chemical, it could be cancer causing,
yeah.
and
Everything's a chemical. The air you breathe is a
and an
chemical. The water
attorney
you
said,
drink.
"Oh well, the government has said it can be causing all these cancers, and if you've ever used Roundup and you had cancer, boy, can we do something." And uh, they did the same thing to the asbestos industry, and all the people that were really eligible for the $20 billion that were set up collected and pretty much aged out, and the fund has been around so long. There's about $8 billion left, but there's nobody to collect it. So the attorneys every once in a while will advertise for let's do something about mesothelioma. There
Yeah.
isn't anybody to collect it
Mhm.
now. I mean, those people are gone. I went to school that had pipes covered with that stuff. I wonder if I'm eligible.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Okay, I think
Peachtree.
we're going to wrap it up in just a few moments here, Diana. Um, yes, you can grow peach trees here in Central Florida. You have to get the right variety of peach tree, so not any old peach is going to grow and do well here. And yeah, they do okay in the sandy soil. It's always good to build your sandy soil up with compost or some kind of organic matter. That always helps. And then Sharon asks, can we live completely without commercial pesticides and herbicides? For a homeowner, whether you have just a landscape or you have a landscape and a vegetable garden, so I'm kind of thinking like, could I live without commercial pesticides and herbicides? I can and I do. So it kind of depends on what you consider a commercial pesticide. But I know from all the different questions I get and all the different insect IDs, and people have this on their plant and that on their plants and this chewing holes, whatever. If you have basically a toolkit and you have BT, you have insecticidal soap, maybe a couple of other things, that's really about all a homeowner needs. That's all I need. I do use herbicides to kill weeds because my house came with rock areas, and I'm not crawling around on my hands and knees
Mm-mm.
pulling the weeds up every 2 weeks. And that's what it takes. And I ain't going to do that. So I use herbicides. But yeah, a homeowner from their perspective could either use none or really limit it. So I think when it comes to the problems that we have with fertilizers and chemicals in our water supply and causing other problems, it's not everybody that's adding to the problem. It's just some people. And if we can convince them to change their ways or cut back or be just more thoughtful before they used them, I think that would really
Just
help.
follow the label.
The thing that happens that people don't really understand and probably don't appreciate that much is when you develop a monoculture, you develop a situation where every plant is the same, and a disease of that plant or an insect that affects that plant can go through and destroy a tremendous amount in an extremely short period of time. That's why monocultures, as a general rule, are a very bad thing. Having all the same lawn in a community, if somebody has a problem, everybody starts having a problem.
Yep.
Now, that is a situation where you have to have some chemical. Now, the biggest place that we have the monoculture thing is in farming. If we're going to grow corn, we're going to have massive areas of corn. If you don't do the chemical treatment, you have one of the say army worms. You have army worms this year, and you lose half your crop. Next year, you can't plant corn again because you lose 100% of the crop. So there's a situation because they're growing a monoculture, and you have to have the monoculture. You have to have the chemical support that it takes. When we were growing an acre of corn and an acre of wheat and things like that, and supporting a local community, the farming didn't require all that chemical action. But today's, where instead of having 90% of the people feeding 100%, we have 2% of the people feeding 100%. And in order to do it, the cost is you have to have the chemicals to grow the monoculture it takes to feed the people. Maybe there's too many people, but the only way you would solve that problem is to reduce the number of areas of monoculture, and the only way you can do that is to reduce population. So yes, we need it in one hand, where you're in your home situation, with the exception of the actual grass itself. Very, very few places have a monoculture. You've got a tree of one kind, you've got a bush of something else, and in that situation, you don't have one bad thing that's going to come in and wipe everything out. So I really agree with the good doctor. A homeowner can get by with next to nothing. A farmer is going to have some of the most effective chemicals that he can get.
Okay, guys, looks like it's that time. Looks like we're doing pretty well with time management today. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We will be back next Thursday at 10 a.m. I know that I'll be here.
I'll be here.
I can make that.
Looks like we'll all be here. So hopefully all of you will be back here again next week. Also, if you're watching a recorded version of this, feel free, and you have questions about your lawn and garden, you want to send pictures, whatever it may be, let me go ahead and put my email back here. Feel free to shoot me an email with pictures. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Things are a little hectic right now because of a lot of different grant programs that I'm working on, and we're working on videos, and we're always working on all kinds of stuff here. So
if you find a really unusual insect, send us a picture. The good doctor is an entomologist and really enjoys those things. And there's some insects that we're on the lookout for. So if you see something that you really think is unusual, send us a picture.
Or if you'd like to come by and meet Bernie in person, he's here pretty much all day long on Thursdays. There's our phone number. Give us a call. If you call, you can talk to Teresa, and she'll tell you if Bernie's here or not. You can come by and bring your insect in for Bernie to identify in person. So, I mean, we all really exist. We're all really here. So feel free. And that goes for everybody who's watching this, the recorded version also. So let me go ahead and say thanks, everybody, so much for tuning in. And we'll be back here again next Thursday at 10 a.m. See you then.